Here's some footage from several sparring sessions throughout October. Keep in mind I edited the footage down, so most of these rounds didn't end as quickly as it may seem here. So let's take a look at some interesting exchanges here against Diane. This was not a trade in his favor. He cut to my arm, but that wouldn't have stopped my cut to his head. So they're kind of cautiously trying to find an opening, and until eventually I was able to disengage and cut to his arm, and then I could bring up the sword in time to defend against his thrust. This was a great response, so I threw a thwart cut and immediately cut to the inside of the arm, which is vulnerable there. Now here I was kind of asleep. He had an overbind, he had me on point. I needed to do something about it, but I didn't. I was still, processing, loading, trying to decide what to do, and so he just thrust. So there I tried again to cut him on the arm, but he noticed it, caught it on the guard, and then thrust immediately, which I tried to defend, but wasn't quick enough. So here he tried to cut to my arm, but I reacted in time and defended against it. If you notice here, he's aggressively crossing the line with his blade, so that closes off the right side, or his left side, for attack, but his right side is more open. So there I was able to cut to his leg, but it was only with the tip of the blade, so it wouldn't do that much damage. The important thing is I was able to cover afterwards. Then I tried to knock his blade aside into a false edge krumpau on his arm, which connected, but at the same time he got me in the face. I evade and cover that cut to my leg. That was nicely done. Notice the very tight wrist cut he performs there, so he exposes himself very little with that. There I was able to time a cut to his knee while deflecting his wrist cut. And there I tried to get the arm, but it was too well defended. And then he just dipped under. Beautiful lunge there. There's some work from the bind, constraining, disengaging. He attempts a cut to my head, but I'm able to raise up to guard, to deflect it, and then dip under and cut to the body while he defends high. So the messer has a lot more heft and can deliver more powerful cuts and be more dominant in the bind. But here's the good thing about the sidesword. It's very agile. You can easily change through the point and deliver a thrust. There was a quick wrist cut to my hand, which I didn't see coming. So there I tried again to cut to his right side, but he catches it with minimal defensive action on the guard and then immediately rolls into the thrust. That was perfect. There's some low intensity free play with Lucas. We weren't wearing masks on that day because he was suffering from jaw pain and couldn't deal with the mask, so we had to be extra careful. So there I was able to pass by his blade and perform a thrust. Very slow and controlled. Speaking of safe, this was not very safe, what I did there at the end. So this, so far, was good. Cut to his leg, but then afterwards I did an uncovered thrust without crossing the line and constraining him, which is why he could still deliver a cut at the same time. So I could have done that better. In this case, we are in the bind here. I noticed that he wasn't strong in the bind, so I could just come in and thrust, and him pushing it to the side directed it into his arm, I think, rather than the chest, but either way, not good news. That was a cap hit right there. I tried to strike his blade aside, but didn't follow through enough. Then I could sneak in a thrust to his hand. He tries to cut, I covered that. And I wasn't actually aiming for the crotch, by the way, it's just what happened, but this is why you need to wear a cup. They got my hand with a false edge cut. And then dual messer versus kriegsmesser. There I'm just using my range to snipe his hand with a false edge cut. And so there I'm just trying to stay in control, just have a favorable bind for me on at least one of his messers. So I only have to worry about the other one. I tried to thrust to the chest, but he caught it. And here's a quick exchange. So on my way out after the thrust, I managed to cut the hand. And when I cover here against this cut, and I see the other one coming, try to get it with a thwart cut, but I didn't do it right. As I keep moving back, I try to thrust, but I miss, so he cuts me on the hip, and then all I could do was a slicing draw cut there. There's steel longsword with Cyan. He tries a quick hand snipe, but I'm able to displace it. There I beat his blade aside with my false edge and then try to cut to the leg, but as he's moving back, all I'm really getting is a piece of gambeson. I didn't connect there properly. And this time he did snipe the hand in the middle of my cut. This was a close one. So he tried to go for a thrust to my throat, which I was barely able to catch in time, right there. Then I was thinking too long and hesitating, so he grabs my blade, but I'm able to wrench it out of his grip and then cut his leg. It was only a light cut, but if he had gotten a better grip on my blade, I would have been screwed there. Careful not to rush in and get nailed in the process. So there, I'm able to cut to the inside of the thigh. That's a lethal cut because of the femoral artery there. Here he crossed the line so far to my right that his point didn't threaten me, so I was able to just come in and cut to his leg. But I should have protected myself better afterwards. I tried the same thing, but he caught that. Just some more back and forth here until there he tries a single-handed thrust, which has more reach. I catch that and I try to go in with a thrust. As he moves backward, I'm able to catch his hand with a cut. Quick beat to my blade, and then he's able to land a leg cut before I have time to move it out of the way. So he went for extra reach with one hand, but because I displaced it, that left him vulnerable. He just had to run backward, so I chased him. And this is actually a case where the sword throw would come in handy. You know, the way I showed in the other video, this sort of underhand throw, in this case, I think that would have worked pretty well, actually, because he was open. So that would be a case of skewer him with a throw and then try to stay safe until he collapses, basically. But I didn't want to be a dickus, so I didn't actually throw it. So there I catch his false edge hand snipe with my cross guard, and then move in for a thrust. Because he was moving backwards at the time, it was only a light hit. Wouldn't have stabbed far enough to be incapacitating. Quick leg snipe, and I cover right after. There I'm waiting for him to come in, but then I decide to do a single-handed thrust to the knee, which could have been great if my aim hadn't been slightly off to the side, so just skip off. Now with synthetic messer, I try to cut to the inside of his arm, but he delivers a cut to my head at the same time, and I think all I got was really the cloth of his gambeson. So here the question is, would my cut to his arm have stopped his thrust? Considering that it went to the crook of his arm, that could potentially be disabling enough to stop that. He tries to stab me in the face, I displace it, catch his hand, then he tries to catch my other hand, but I adjust and cut him in the ribs. Good example of measure control. I do a leg void against his low cut, then try to cut to his arm, but he moves back just enough that he's still within range to cut to my shoulder. Well done right there. Okay, here we're just feeling out the situation with binds and just to see what the opponent does. Eventually he notices that my point is so far off to the side that he can safely cut down to the leg. Sneaking in, trying to keep safe, and then I drop down on his right side, cut to his thigh, but he manages a thrust with a hanging point. There, false edge cut to my hand as I try to come in. This is pretty neat. So here he disengages and thrusts, which I'm just about able to deflect with my hand. I try to grab it, he pulls his blade back, and then I'm able to cut. There it displaces thrust to the side, and then try to cut to the thigh, but I wasn't close enough. So again, it only hit the cloth. There I do a leg void against his low cut, and you can see how close it is. I was just about able to evade that. And then I come forward, displace his cut, and follow up with a counter to his hand. I try to push his blade up and cut low, but he evades it in time. So this is an example of a longer round. Generally, I cut out the downtime, so to speak, where no hits happen, but this is how it goes sometimes. You know, if both are cautious, it can take a while until a decisive hit is being made. Same thing as before, I only got his cloth, it wasn't quite close enough. We're waiting each other out, and I try to beat his blade aside with a krumpau, which didn't work because he was moving backward. And there it is, he beats my blade, disengages, and does a false edge cut to my hand. This one was funny, so watch what's going on. I was deliberately sticking my arm out in the hopes that he would try to snipe it so I can respond. He didn't take the bait, and then I was just like, you know what? Let me just cut your hand directly. That misdirection was enough to distract him. Here, knock his blade to the side, which causes him to lose his grip. It took me a moment to realize that, and I was like, oh crap, so I need to move in now. But because of that hesitation, he was able to move backward and evaded. There he moves out of measure and cuts to the shoulder. And so here, I'm able to evade that leg cut just in time, and then I counter to his hand. Trying to move in, but his defense is solid. So this is again a longer one. When it looks like we're just slicing through the air, that's generally attempts to hit the arms that the other person simply evades. Grappling, until eventually he knocks me on the head with a flat, but that was not actually the decisive one. I missed this at the time. He did a downward thrust to the back of my neck. Then recover his cut and then strike to the leg. This would have been really dangerous for me if he had moved forward because he had me on point. So that was a risk that I probably shouldn't have taken, even though I got away with it this time. His thrust right there missed, but my cut to his forearm would have prevented that anyway. A cut like this with a messer would be enough to sever the arm. And here are a couple of bloopers. I was wearing the wrong shoes on wet grass. Rather slippery affair at times. Anyway, hope you liked it. Thanks for watching and have a good one, folks.